As I settled into my quarters at Candlekeep, the sea breeze gently rustling the pages of ancient tomes, I found myself reflecting on the ancient days of thunder. The great empires of the creator races dominated the landscape, leaving their indelible marks on history. Among these early denizens were the Neanderthals, or cave folk, whose existence stretches back to the very roots of humanity. The Neanderthals were impressive, standing tall with thick, powerful builds, long arms and incredibly hairy bodies. Their larger heads, sloping brows and protruding jaws gave them a fierce and formidable appearance. Despite their primitive way of life, Neanderthals were just as intelligent and cunning as humans, albeit with a stronger sense of smell and greater strength. Their eyesight, however, was considered poorer than average. In the midst of their hunter-gatherer society, Neanderthals adorned themselves with war paint and crude tattoos. They wore crudely tanned hides for armor and used primitive weapons made of stone, including bolas, clubs, harpoons, short bows, slings, spears, and throwing axes. Spears were their most commonly used weapon, reflecting their barbarian-like fighting style. Yet, many Neanderthals were also capable druids, attuned to the natural world around them. Their history is intertwined with the tumultuous times of the creator races. The Saruk, an ancient reptilian race, founded great empires around -35,000 DR and created the yuan-ti, naga, lizard folk, and other serpent folk. The Batrachi, amphibious beings, rose to power around -33,500 DR, creating the bullywugs, doppelgangers, kuatoa, and other amphibious races. The Ayari, avian in nature, established their empires around -31,000 DR, giving rise to the Aarakocra, Kinku, and other avian humanoids. The Fae, dwelling in the otherworldly realm of fairy, created Koreds, pixies, and sprites. Humans, primitive and ape-like, also existed during this time, but were far from the dominant force they would later become. These races built towering cities of glass and stone, crisscrossed the wild lands with shining roads, and experimented with powerful magic that rivaled the gods. The Saruk's realm of Okoth, Maharshalk, and Istosififil, the Batrachi's Colophon, Boitumelo, and Jokudian, and the Ayares Viaku, Fuikri, and Shara were all testaments to their grandeur. But their empires were not to last. Catastrophic events like the Tearfall, where the primordial Asgarath hurled an ice moon at the planet, and the rise of the dragons led to their downfall. Returning to my life at Candlekeep, I ponder these ancient histories while sipping a warm cup of tea. The keep's towering walls and ancient tomes provide a serene backdrop for my studies. After returning from the Moonshay Isles, I planned my next journey to the Nilanth Isles, and then onto the Lantern Islands. Yet, there is a unique comfort in Candlekeep, surrounded by the greatest collection of knowledge in all of Faerun. The Neanderthals, displaced by the rise of human civilization, were forced into isolated areas, living in clans within large cave networks or ancient ruins. Their hunting grounds were marked with crude fetishes made of skin, bone, and trophies taken from defeated enemies. They hunted bison, caribou, deer, horses, ground sloths, glyptodons, woolly mammoths, and branta, maintaining a diet rich in protein. Religion among Neanderthals varied, taught by druids or sorcerers through oral tradition and cave paintings. Some clans worshipped fire, maintaining central bonfires, while others practiced ancestor worship, marking graves with cairns. They spoke a crude form of modern common and had no written language, relying on cave paintings and oral tradition to preserve their stories. Neanderthals had a contentious relationship with other races. Among their rivals were the Quaggoth, a surface-dwelling civilization that roamed the same lands during the Days of Thunder. The Quaggoth, sometimes called deep bears, were tall, bulky humanoids with beast-like features and long, shaggy white hair. Fearless and warlike, they patrolled their territories fiercely, hunting for food and laying ambushes. However, their encounters with more powerful races such as the Drow and Illithids gradually drove them underground, where they adapted to the harsh environment of the Underdark. Here, they faced further subjugation, often becoming slaves and guards for their captors. At the same time, the original pig-nosed orc tribes inhabited the far north. These tribes were known for their brutality and primitive lifestyle, often raiding Neanderthal settlements and competing for resources. The orcs, driven by their aggressive nature and insatiable hunger for conquest, continually expanded their territories. However, their way of life was about to change dramatically with the arrival of new waves of alien orcs. These new orcs, later known as the Grey Orcs or Mountain Orcs, arrived in the spine of the world mountains through planar rifts and portals created by ancient magic. Unlike their predecessors, the Grey Orcs were more organised and militaristic, forming powerful war bands and establishing strongholds in the rugged terrain. Their presence posed a significant threat to the Neanderthals and the original Orc tribes, leading to numerous conflicts over territory and resources. Following the Grey Orcs came the Thyan Orcs, who were distinguished by their more tan and red skin and less monstrous appearance. These Orcs were influenced by the Thyan wizards, who saw potential in using them as mercenaries and shock troops. The Thyan Orcs, while still fierce warriors, had a more structured society and were known for their disciplined combat tactics. In contrast to the other Orcish tribes, the Yuan-ti Orcs emerged as a peaceful faction. Residing in the tortured lands near the north end of the Anurosh Desert, these Orcs had converted to a more agrarian lifestyle, farming the rich soil left behind by the melting Great Glacier. The Yuan-ti Orcs sought to live in harmony with their environment and neighbouring races, adopting a philosophy of peaceful coexistence. Their society was marked by a sense of community and mutual aid, a stark departure from the warlike tendencies of their kin. This period also saw the rise of other formidable creatures and races that would shape the southern lands of Aber-Toril. The Nagas and Yuan-ti, both created by the ancient Saruk, established themselves as powerful and cunning rulers of the southern jungles. The Nagas, with their serpentine bodies and sharp intellect, mastered sorcery and often served as guardians and researchers of magical knowledge. The Yuan-ti, their more insidious cousins, built their civilization on the foundations of deceit and manipulation, creating vast empires that dominated the landscape. Alongside them were the lizard folk and troglodytes, also descendants of the Saruk's creations. The lizard folk, with their tribal societies and strong communal bonds, thrived in the swamps and marshes. Their natural resilience and adaptability allowed them to survive and flourish in these harsh environments. The troglodytes, on the other hand, were known for their barbaric culture centered around food and scent. Their stench was so foul it could incapacitate living creatures nearby. They lived in cave complexes, fiercely territorial and constantly warring among themselves and with other races. The aboleths, malevolent eel-like aberrations from the far realm, initially held sway over many subterranean domains. Their potent psionic abilities and the capacity to enslave other beings made them formidable opponents. However, over time, they were driven back deeper into the Underdark by the persistent and combined efforts of surface and subterranean dwellers, including the Drow and Illithids. The shifting power dynamics forced the aboleths to retreat to hidden underwater lairs where they continued to scheme and plot from the shadows. As the southern lands came under the rule of these scaly races, the humanoid tribes began to emerge and spread. In the far north, the original pig-nosed orc tribes roamed the tundras and icy wastes. They were soon joined by new waves of orcs arriving through planar rifts and portals in the spine of the World Mountains. The humanoid tribes of the north and south began to migrate towards more temperate lands, seeking new territories and opportunities, sparking the disruption, conflict, transformation, and eventual rise of human civilizations and the development of complex societies that would shape the future of Aber-Toril. As the northern tribes settled into more temperate lands, the seeds of future kingdoms and cultures were sown. Turning my attention to the Nilanth Isles, a widely scattered chain of nearly 1,000 islands west of Ammon and Tether in the trackless sea, I am reminded of the difference between the tranquil halls of Candlekeep and the lawless chaos of these pirate-infested waters. The Nilanth Isles are an evil realm where more than half the islands lack potable water, rendering them uninhabitable. However, the hundreds of islands that can support life are fiercely contested by evil pirates who prey upon the shipping lines of Arm, Tethir, Kalimshan, the Sword Coast, and the Moonshae Isles. Among the hundreds of islands, only a few are known to mainlanders, while the pirate captains navigate their treacherous waters with more intimate knowledge. The islands known among the pirate captains include the Carcathen, the Hook Isle, one called Ioma, another called Irfong, the Isle of Skaug, one called the Nemesser, then the Rookery, and the dreaded Thordentor. The channel between the Nilanth Isles and the Tethir Peninsula is called Asavir's Channel, and although the pirates hunt there on a regular basis, it's still a well-travelled sea lane leading to merchant ships a bit more sturdy and with a lot more sail than your average galleon. By 1369 DR, the Twisted Rune, an evil cabal of the so-called immortal undead, had placed a magical gate on the islands, allowing for instantaneous movement to other locations, further complicating the region's already volatile dynamics. The demographics of the Nilanth pirates are notably diverse, with non-humans such as orcs, lizard folk, ogres, and minotaurs making up the bulk of the pirate population. These various races and factions wage war on each other as often as they do with outsiders, adding another layer of danger to these waters. Life and society in the Nilanth Isles are brutal and honourless. The Reavers are notorious for their cruelty, often torturing their victims and leaving them to die slow, agonising deaths. The youth of the Nilanth are born into a murderous existence, with death being their only escape. Nearly all fit adults fight aboard ships, while weak and crippled children who survive are left ashore to repair ships or salvage wrecks. Except for a few smaller settlements, most pirates live on their ships or in huts that can be abandoned at a moment's notice. What land community exists deals in barter and farm what they can, but most goods are raided from ships and stocked in very secure warehouses, sea caves and smugglers' ports. As I strap up my journals and load my explosive crossbow bolts carefully into my concealed bandolier, I get ready for an exciting trip to the Nilanth Isles. I make sure my belt pouches of holding are well stocked. One is filled with snacks of dried fruit and nuts, the other with dried meats and wrapped boiled sweets. My haversack, ever reliable, carries pots, pans, furniture and all my writing equipment. The bag of holding, a particularly lavish piece of gear, holds a veritable warehouse inventory of items, much of it keyed to a magnificent mansion gemstone of wonder, a treasure not for sale. With my preparations complete, I take a moment to reflect on the journey ahead. The Nilanth Isles, with their evil history and treacherous waters, offer a difference to the scholarly pursuits of Candlekeep. Yet, it's in these differing experiences that the richness of the world reveals itself. My name is AJ Pickett. Thanks for joining me, and as always, I will be back with more for you very soon.